So as I said, these coffee talks are now a weekly rendezvous, and we are building these most special moments with the help of the scientific committee members of Eduniversal. And for Central Asia, Aneeta Madhok is in charge of these responsibilities since the beginning of the Eduniversal rankings. So we are really happy to have her with us, and I'm going to give her the floor to lead the session about Gen Z and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecile, and thank you, Marijo and Liuba, and a lot of my colleagues, Mike Wood, I can see. It's great to meet here online. I've been a part of Eduniversal family now for so many years, since inception. It's becomes very difficult for me to make a compromise and have only virtual meetings. I miss the vibe and the chemistry that we all share, and the wonderful wine that goes along with it too. So for me, that's real, and this is virtual. However, I must say congratulations to Cecile and the entire team, including Martial, for having created a lot of that, the ethos of Eduniversal in a virtual space, as we saw in the Eduniversal World Convention in 2020, which was in a 3D format and which was very much, a great shadow of the original thing. But of course, the original is still the original. And we hope in 2022, we will have a real Eduniversal World Convention once more. And we'll be able to break bread and drink a glass of wine again.
For sure.
So in the meantime, we have got coffee and coffee talks going, and I can simply say cheers to the coffee right here, and we can talk. So I'd love to really welcome our guest speakers today. We are speaking about Gen Z in the global world today. I'm a part of what was called the baby boomers generation. We were revolutionary in our own ways. We were part of the hippie generation. We rebelled against authority. We took up protests, for a cause. And we followed when we could, and we didn't follow when we didn't need to. We were fairly different in our views, and we brought a lot of passion to what we did. Followed by the millennials, where I'd see my children, they're part of the millennial generation. They were much more individualistic and less group oriented. And they had strong thoughts of their own, but there was still a lot of, rebellion and fighting for a cause, and a lot of inner, confrontations with the truth and the reality of the world out there. Now we come to the generation Z and the Z generation, and they're being managed by the millennials and the baby boomers simultaneously. And the leaders are the millennials and the leaders are the baby boomers. And the Gen Z is a completely different ballgame altogether. I think COVID has had a great impact in terms of precipitating or accelerating the pace of change, and precipitating the Gen Z's presence in the workforce, where a lot of the old timers seem to have either mellowed down or moved away or gone off to more individualistic passions and professions and left the workforce. But it's the Gen Z that is now coming into the workforce in large numbers. And thanks to COVID, that pace has got accelerated. So what is the Gen Z about? And, when we look at the young generation, there's a whole lot of tumultuous thinking in our heads and in our hearts. We find it a big challenge to talk to them and communicate with them. At the same time, we look at them and see so much of our own youth and our own childhood in them. And at the same time, we can understand their struggles. We would love to offer them our wisdom, but they don't receive it. So there is a lot of, interplay of generation gap that comes in to this. So to be a little bit more scientific in my approach, there was a McKinsey Consulting article on Gen Z and the future of the workforce. And they say that the Gen Z is characterized by the 4 core behavior patterns. The first behavior pattern is they value their individual expression and they avoid labels and stereotypes. They come into the world saying, I'm here with a purpose on this planet and I'm going to live my life my way. And groups don't make sense to them, teams don't make sense to them. They are very, very individualistic people. There are no stereotypes. Each one is finding a unique niche in the world for themselves, and the stereotypes are all debunked. Gen Z is driven by a variety of causes. So they believe in the betterment of society. They would like to volunteer. They'd like to, change lives of other people. They'd like to do good for the poor segments of society. They're conscious of the environment, and the planet and climate change and sustainability. So they're incredibly humane people, the Gen Z. They believe in the need for a dialogue to resolve conflicts, which must be dealt with directly. That's what we baby boomers are scared of. In our frame of mind, when there is a conflict situation, we try and, some kind of a superficial resolve, or we make a diplomatic resolve. We hold back our anger and our conflicting statements. We don't want to rock the boat. But the young generation today, Gen Z, they say that all conflict must be dealt with a dialogue directly, no matter how difficult it can get. Gen Z is also born into media. They're born with mobile phones and things we had to learn. They're just born with one of these in their hand, and they're born like that. So they're exposed to a lot of data, information very early on, extremely early on. And in some ways, they're ahead of the older generations. They're ahead of the millennials. They're even ahead of the baby boomers. They're extremely analytical and extremely practical. They will look at the data and they will make decisions in a very cognitive way. So this is what McKinsey study has revealed about Gen Z. So what does that do to people like me who are baby boomers and my next generation who are millennials? What does that do to us in our leadership? We now adjust to the new needs of the workforce because the old ways don't work. There's no more authority, there's no more power, and there's no more of diplomacy and political correctness. The need is for us to address the conflict head on in a way that equalizes with people, gives the Gen Z the power and a voice in everything that matters to them. So as a leader, I need to be data-based. I need to have facts, figures, and information in my hands. I need to have a lot of empowerment, self-empowerment. I cannot just say that, oh, hey, listen, I'm going to be charismatic, I'm going to be inspirational, I'm going to make an inspirational quotation and people will follow that and be inspired. No, there's a lot more to leadership than that. Leadership also needs to account for decisions that respect the country, the nation, diversity, the planet, the environment, and whole host of other social and economic factors. We cannot say in business that it's about business bottom lines anymore. So I'm here to speak with our panel in this context and to seek their opinions as to, leaders of business schools in the Central Asian region. What are the challenges, to teach this generation and to educate this generation, and also to build the leadership of tomorrow. So that's what we're going to take up for our discussion here. And our panel is very, very distinguished indeed. India, Kazakhstan were the countries from the Central Asian region that are the most represented on our panel. Our speakers are Professor Rishikesha Krishnan. He's the director of IIM Bangalore, which is a 5-palm rated business school in the Eduniversal system. He's also a professor of strategy, and he brings with him a lot of experience and research and perspective. And we are looking forward to some of the very, very unique opinions of Professor Rishikesha. Second speaker is Professor Snigda Patnayak. She's the Pro Vice Chancellor of Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University in India, based in Delhi. And she's a woman who has a lot of perspective coming from the human resources field in her prior engagement as the Dean and Director of the School of Human Resources Management at the Xavier Institute of Management in Bhubaneswar. She is a familiar face in Eduniversal circles because she's visited some of our Eduniversal World Conventions before. Our wonderful speaker, Professor Gulnara Kurenkeva. She's the Dean of the Graduate School of Business and the Rector of Almaty University in Kazakhstan. And she's led that university through a lot of growth and a lot of recognition during her last 20 years of service in that. So, having introduced the speakers, now I would like each speaker to respond to the question I've raised, the context which we have set. We see that change is happening all around us. Particularly post-COVID, the pace of change has only accelerated, with Gen Z assuming higher percentage of the workforce than ever before. It's clear that everything has changed. The way we learn, the way we work, the way we create teams, the way we relate to authority figures and leaders and organizations, and even the way we dress and speak at work. So how do business schools look at this change? And what are the adjustments in curriculum, in teacher-student relationships, in pedagogy and methodology, and in business school learning environment that you bring in leading your own educational institutes? So I'd like to begin with Professor Rishikesha, if you can share your perspectives, please.
Thank you for inviting me to this panel. Greetings to everyone from the Eduniversal team. This is certainly an interesting topic to debate. Every generation finds the succeeding generation quite different and peculiar. So I sometimes wonder whether, all these generalizations we make about generations with all these labels, millennials, Gen Z, etc. While they might have a element of truth to them, sometimes I also think that, this is just the way one generation kind of tries to differentiate itself from the other. So when I look at my students particularly, I tend to see more of a continuum. I don't see these very sharp breakpoints where millennials end and Gen Z starts and so on. I mean, there are several things which have been happening over the years which represent the kind of changes I'm talking about. So as you rightly mentioned, Professor Madhok,
yes,
certainly one important change has been the whole shift to digital, yes, and also the advent of social media. One thing that's quite clear is that there are lots and lots of distractions and diversions around. And by and large, attention span has become much shorter. So this is, I think, one feature. I mean, it's probably affecting all of us older folks as well, but these youngsters, particularly, at the kind of active age at which they are, obviously, there are lots and lots of things which are on their mind, and many of them are quite exciting and demand their immediate attention. So I think this is one important thing we need to keep in mind. Second is this, obviously, as time has passed and the digital media have become stronger and information availability has become more, basically just become easier, the necessity of, really doing something different in the classroom has only increased. Because a lot of the straightforward information or even, just understanding basic concepts, people can easily do it online. They don't need to sit in a class to do that. And sometimes they might actually think they can do it faster on their own online rather than the gentle pace at which a class might happen. So when I combine this state of distractedness or short attention span with the fact that there are alternate methods in which you can learn, it's very obvious that the classroom has to be much more engaging, much more captivating, holding the attention of students for it to be effective. So I think just reflecting this fact, I think many of us, faculty and teachers, are realizing that, increasingly, and I don't mean this in a bad sense, we have to be performers, not just teachers. We have to be able to capture the attention of our students so as to engage them in the classroom. And there has to be some clear, as the term goes, value addition that the students are getting from being in the class environment. And this is, of course, equally true of online classes. Now, if I translate this into the workplace, it's clear that, this transition from school or college to the workplace has always been not an easy transition. And when you consider what I told you just now about people's need to be engaged and, if I may use the word, entertained all the time, it's not surprising that they are more demanding in the workplace as well. So so in addition to all the things that you mentioned, Dr. Madhok, I would also say that it's important for the workplace also to be engaging. I don't think, anymore you can get away with just providing some drudgery kind of work, because in an era of AI and digital technologies, a lot of drudgery can actually be addressed by bots or other, digital means. You don't need human beings to do it. And increasingly, we have evidence that the role of the human being needs to be more on the creative side. If you look at a lot of the reports on the organization of the future from consulting firms and other agencies, they're increasingly looking at the routine tasks being taken care of by machines and human beings doing more of the creative work. So this is what I think people in the workplace, particularly youngsters joining today, expect. They expect to have creative work. They expect to be entertained and engaged. We have to compete to capture their attention. And so the same problem that we face in a business school translates into the workplace as well. So I think my conclusion at the end of this is to say that just like faculty are increasingly having to be good performers in the classroom, managers and leaders in enterprises also need to find ways of, in quotes, performing to engage the youngsters who are now joining the workforce. Yeah, thank you.
Great. That's wonderful, to go with the flow. It's a continuum. The change is not like, in bits and pieces. It's a continuum. You can't break it up. And that's more engaging, and we have to perform much more and entertain much more. And at the same time, deliver the content. Students are empowered by digital information. So the classroom has to become much more meaningful than just giving information. And at the same time, there has to be some way of engaging the creative impulses of the young generation. Great. I'd like to call on Gulnara. Professor Gulnara, please. Would you like to share what's happening at Almaty University with the changes that we are seeing in the nature of students and participants of our business schools?
Thank you very much for inviting me as a speaker in such an interesting format. Dear colleagues and friends, that's the coffee talks, online coffee talks. I think it's the good format for the sharing experience, sharing the knowledge from the different region. Hope next time we will have the opportunity to see all of you offline, to have the coffee on real time, to have the cup of coffee together. We see in Kazakhstan, at Almaty, we see the importance of the rethinking and opportunities in connection to Generation Z. Generation Z is open mind. We see that the young people who have the project-oriented mindset and independent thinking. They grew up. We should understand how what is the nature of this generation? What is the surround of environment of this generation? They grew up in the vibrant and changing environment that led the particularities for this generation as follow. They are easily adaptive to the digital and virtual reality. What we realize it, they've been happy to study online. It is maybe the faculty maybe not so much prepared for the online teaching, but the student, they've been much more prepared for the online education. We are still running some our classes online. We see that for them, online education is okay. They are happy to have the online classes. It means that it's challenge for the first of all for the faculty. Also, we see that they are much more addicted to gadgets. Sometimes it can be the problem for this generation. We see that I don't know what will be in the future 10 or 20 years, but I think it will be the global problem, addiction or to gadgets. Also, the good thing about this generation, they are environmentally friendly, understand the importance of the saving planet. They are thinking mostly the globally. They engage it more for the global projects. It's also the good thing about this generation. What is the importance of the rethinking and transformation of the managerial education and curriculum for this generation? What we should develop the comprehensive skills and knowledge to support this generation in uncertainty and instability changing world, in digital world. It's the important to have such a skills to prepare them for this world. It means we should adjust the curriculum for this. At Almayu, we propose interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary courses and programs to help our students to be more adaptive, more flexible. For example, we are supporting the final project for the joint final project of our students. For instance, the students from the marketing and IT can do together the final projects. And also at Almayu, we perform specific entrepreneurial track to support initiative thinking and enlarge the capacity of the students for job opportunities and to start their own businesses. We also offer the double majors at our university. For example, double majors with the finance and law, IT and management, because we see the demand of the job market will be the multitasking specialist needs for job markets. The labor market expectation reject current trends and transform understanding of the multitasking of Generation Z. We suppose that fundamental studies and applied knowledge should be as a top priority for the business school because we have the gamifications in the some courses, but I think it's couldn't support to the fundamental studies. We used it for the assessment, the daily assessment of the knowledge that's at classroom, but for the fundamental studies, applied knowledge, I think it always will be on the topic of the business school. That's it from me. That's ready to answer if you have some questions.
Good.
Thank you.
Same question we'd love to now ask Professor Snigda. Would you like to share your opinion about how business schools adjust to the needs of the emerging generations? You're on mute, Snigda. Professor Snigda, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, she seems to be a little frozen. Can you hear me? Okay, I don't think.
I'm trying to open her mic, but it's not working. So now she
seems to have dropped out completely from the scene. So we'll continue with our interesting discussion. Maybe she will come back. It could be some network issue. Well, yesterday we had the big crash of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp simultaneously, and that was a big one. So small crashes like this is perfectly understandable and acceptable, particularly in developing countries like ours, where infrastructure sometimes is not completely perfectly in place. So we'll move to the next round. Professor Rishikesha, I want a direct pinpointed question. How has your curriculum changed in the last few years? And not just the curriculum of the business school, but also especially the curriculum on leadership. How has that changed in the last few years?
So there are three major forces which have impacted our curriculum in the last few years. The first one is the advent of digital technology.
Yeah.
And this is affecting our curriculum in many ways. It's affecting, of course, all the functional areas. It's affecting the way we look at strategy. New perspectives like platform technologies and new business models have become very important. And the whole way we look at business has in a way changed. So digital is the one big change. So digital has come in two ways. Of course, it's kind of come into each of the core courses, but it's also involved some new courses like courses on digital transformation. The second important force which has changed the curriculum is data. So, while data was always important and we always taught our students quantitative methods and how to deal with data, what is obvious today is that data is much more available than it used to be. Earlier, the students used to learn statistical methods. When they went to the workplace, they would often find they didn't have the data required to use those methods. But that's not the case anymore. In many businesses, data is getting generated almost automatically. So your ability to use data effectively has become a second important thing. This is coming into the curriculum again in multiple ways. It's coming in through new courses on business analytics, some courses on AI. We even started a new program, an MBA program with a specialization in business analytics last year. And there are a whole host of electives which have come in as a result of this. The third important change we are seeing, which is impacting our MBA curriculum, is the importance of ESG, environment, social, and governance issues. And this is perhaps the element which is having the most impact on leadership, as you just asked. I think there's quite a big consensus now that businesses have a huge role to play in combating climate change and global warming. And what we are doing is just not enough. So it's important that our students who will be the leaders of tomorrow need to be much more proactive in taking a leadership position in this area. And this is something we are trying to underline in the curriculum. The whole social space, the social ideas of social responsibility have again got underlined also thanks to COVID. And this is going to be another critical area for leaders of the future. So we have more courses coming in. We have courses on inclusive business models. We already had courses on CSR. So I think that basket of courses is sort of expanding. And the last part of ESG is, of course, governance, ethics, and all that goes with that, which has always been important, but I think is becoming even more so. And we are finding this becoming an increasingly important part of the curriculum. Leadership is not an easy subject to teach, as you know, Dr. Madhok. And I think what's also happening, at least in our school, is over time, our enrollment has become much larger. Today, we have 525 students admitted to our MBA program every year. And to do the kind of small group work that is required to teach leadership more effectively is quite challenging. So we've tried experiments. This is actually an experiment we tried in my earlier school, that is IIM Indore, where we got the second year students to act as leadership coaches to the first year students. This helped in two ways. It developed the leadership skills of the second year students as well. And it also enabled them to shape and mentor the first year students. This was something we learned from, I think, University of Chicago, where they do something similar. It required a lot of coaching of the second year students, but otherwise it seemed to work quite well. So just to sum up, I think one set of changes in the curriculum is coming from the three things I mentioned: digital, data, and ESG. All the three elements of ESG are essential for leadership these days. And of course, there is an ongoing challenge in how do we do a lot of these smaller group activities that will enable leadership skills to be developed among the students. Thank you.
Wonderful. So you're focusing on hard skills with data analytics and management by that, as well as the soft skills of ethics and governance. And
yeah, we are trying, Dr. Madhok, we are trying.
Wonderful. Excellent. So Snigda is back online, and Snigda, we lost you for a minute there. And welcome back. So the first question first, what's the impact on business schools and business school curriculum? And particularly now you have moved from business into the skills and entrepreneurship development. So how are you accommodating the newer ways of doing things? Traditionally, particularly in India, the business schools are very hierarchically managed. The teacher-student relationship is a hierarchical relationship. But the Gen Z doesn't believe in all of that, and the Gen Z is looking at more equalization and more of ability to deal with open dialogue kind of in the classroom. So, what are the changes that you would see, and you would like to bring into your university as well?
So thank you for that, Aneeta. And I'm sorry I lost my connection for a bit, so apologies for that. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here and to listen to what Rishikesh and Gulnara have said. As one looks at Gen Z, and I think there's something that Rishikesh said, that one can't, it's really a continuum. And there's a very interesting paper that I came across that said that when one looks at a generation, and especially in a country like India, one actually is looking at archetypes. So one archetype, for example, was the silver spoon generation, the generation that has grown up in urban cities, is privileged, has parents who work in very high-profile jobs, and therefore their value system, the way the expectations and all of that match what is the so-called stereotype that one holds of the Gen Z. That they are articulate, they are individualistic, they are totally bound to their mobile phones, technology-driven, and all of that. Not afraid to state their viewpoint, expect a lot of freedom. So that, however, there is another kind of archetype which is called the Gemini twins, which is where the parents have moved from a small town or a village into the city. And therefore, there is still a connection with the back home. There is still a connection with the village. There is a movement. There is a need for getting, becoming more prosperous, need for financial stability. And therefore, this group of people are a lot more pushy. They are wanting to make a mark. They are wanting to make a difference. And there's the third, which is people who have come from small towns and have, their parents are still back home. The father maybe maybe an agriculturist. And this person has just moved into the city. This person has just joined maybe a big B school and feels himself or herself totally out of depth. Doesn't know how to manage this entire thing, doesn't know how to manage a context where I am expected to be articulate, I'm expected to say my piece, I'm expected to ask questions in class. And so one of the challenges that a B school faces is how does faculty manage this range? Who are you really teaching? Are you teaching the silver spoon generation? Or are you teaching the one who has just come from a village? And what I have seen as I have taught in XIM is that, we have this bunch of students who come from Delhi, Bombay, all these big cities. And because we located in Orissa, we have a quota. Therefore, we get this bunch of students who come from Orissa. A lot of them come from rural Orissa. And it's very interesting to see the way they transition from being very, very rural in their way they are to becoming more urbanized, more cool in some ways. So one of the things that I think as B school leaders or even leaders at the workplace, something that we need to be very cognizant about is that we are not really talking about a homogeneous mass. We are actually talking about a range. And so how do we therefore cater to this range? Having said that, there is this other very interesting piece of research that I found that said that there are two changes that have really happened with Gen Z. And medical research shows that this generation, the way in which their brain has developed is different. Okay. So even from what the millennials are, this generation, the brain development is such that there is greater focus on visual learning. Yep. So this generation learns by seeing. So one of the difficulties one faces in online classes, as has happened because of COVID, is that a lot of it is, you're talking. But there is a need to, in the curriculum itself, to break this session into smaller bits. And, even when one is doing a case discussion, how does one structure a class has to be very different from the way in which one did it earlier. And I think that is a journey that a lot of us who have been teaching, have been in academics, have faced over the last 1 year. The other piece of research, Professor Rishikesh, you were talking about attention spans. There is actually research earlier when, I used to teach learning and I used to teach, research said that attention span is 20 minutes. Today, this generation, Gen Z, their attention span is only 9 to 10 minutes. And one has to really cater to that 9 to 10 minutes. Okay. So that, and one has to, of course, perform in class so that you hold their attention. Also, this generation, they take technology for granted. So you can't dazzle them with technology. Technology is something that in the classroom, it is really the subject knowledge of the teacher that captures them. You have to be really, really good at what you know. You have to have depth. Otherwise, this generation is not impressed at all. You can't give them surface level knowledge because they are able to Google it. They'll sit in class and they'll Google it right in front of you. So you have to go beyond basic information. You have to tell them facts that startle them to be able to capture their attention. So yes, pedagogy has to change, and we really have to think about what we do with pedagogy. So as I have moved from business education to the skill education, one of the things that we have kind of consciously kept in mind as we have designed courses is One is we have redefined skills. Okay, so skilling typically one thinks of as blue collar. Skilling typically one thinks of as hands-on. We are saying no. I mean, a doctor, a surgeon is skilled. Okay, skill is not just that. So we have developed very interesting courses in the skill domain, like data analytics, like banking finance, like facilities hygiene management, and so on. So we have a whole lot of courses. What we have tried to do in these courses is have as much of skill, hands-on work, practical experience as possible. Get students to actually do the work. And that we are hoping will engage them. So that is how we are looking at pedagogy at the Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University.
And skills will be the competitive advantage of tomorrow.
Absolutely, absolutely. But Aneeta, what is also interesting? Yeah, but there is, when one looks at pedagogical research as well, there is very little research that has been done on vocational pedagogy.
Yeah.
There is a whole lot of research. There's this whole gap that is there. One has so much of research on teaching pedagogy, but none of it that looks at vocational pedagogy. So to me, that's a huge area that one has to explore. So that's all I have from me at this point. Over to you.
So Gulnara, I have some question for you too. Being in Kazakhstan and you are sharing borders with a lot of countries where there's a lot of trouble going on, including places like Afghanistan and other countries which are neighboring you. How has this impacted education? Education is one of the core, functions of any nation, of any society, is to build the skills and the knowledge and educate the masses. So how has the turbulence in the geopolitics of the region that we are seeing, how has that impacted, education in Almaty in Kazakhstan? It would be interesting to know.
The first, what we see, I think that maybe the most country in the region, we see during the pandemic period, the most students, they are staying at Kazakhstan because the most country is closed for the taking students abroad. Last 2 years, the number of new enrolled students in whole university in Kazakhstan is growing because I think that the influence for the with the pandemic. Second, about the according in perspective of the geopolitics, our university, what we are doing. We want to share the high standard of the business education in the region. You know that in the standard of the business school, business education in Central Asia, in such countries in Uzbekistan, in Tajikistan, in the Kyrgyzstan, they even don't have the MBA program. Our goal to share our experience in the region. We start the regional expansion of this. For instance, in the last 2 years, we opened the representatives in Tajikistan and opened the new MBA program. For the market, it's for Tajik market, it's the quite new standard of the business education. They never had such a program. As well, we are launching the new university in Uzbekistan. It also we want to extend the area of the influence for this. It is what we are trying to impact for the region. Third problem, we see how the situation in Afghanistan can influence to our territory to Kazakhstan. In last 2 years, we had the big project. It was sponsored by the UNDP. We educated on the foundation courses the 25 Afghani women's. It was a specialized program for developing the education in the Afghanistan, for Afghanistan, but hope in this year we are expecting more students. Even we gave the scholarship for the Afghani students, which they had some problem with the new government of Afghanistan. We see the education that just one way to change this region, to impact for this region, to education, through the education. This is the standard what we are trying to promote in this region. That's all.
Someday we will meet and I will ask you more about your experiences in the training of Afghani women. Because I heard a lot about that from Elgarim also, you know, when she.
Yes, it was. We are still keep in touch with this. All of these women. They are most of them. They are staying at Kazakhstan. They don't touch with the family. Even they have some problem with family, because if they deleted all the document certificates, they graduated from the international schools, international programs. This is the problem with Afghani women. We are trying to support them to staying at Kazakhstan. They are studying in other university, but generally. In Kazakhstan, the situation is so different than even the most region of the Central Asia, like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. Maybe we are a little bit ahead than on the education than all of the regions.
Amazing. So good. We have about 7 minutes left, and I'm going to take questions. But first, I'll address the questions in the chat window. And Luba asks a question to all the three speakers. How do Gen Z or Gen Z students prefer to be motivated? Just a one-line answer, please, from all the three speakers. Anyone can speak first. How do Gen Z students prefer to be motivated? Snigda, Rishikesha, Gulnara.
I'll stick with what I said earlier. I think they get motivated by challenging tasks that allow them to exercise their creativity.
So creativity is one.
I think, I agree with that. They really thrive on challenges. Really thrive on challenges. Yeah. And something that they see as fun.
Okay. And yes, they need to have fun. Okay.
Yes, I agree with this, that we are trying to promote entrepreneurial thinking as a way of expand the innovation thinking, challenging thinking.
My take on that is that, you know, the Gen Z that's coming needs to have a sense of purpose. You know, why am I here on the planet? What is it I'm meant to be? And it's that sense of purpose that they gain early on in their lives, and they follow that. When I was young, then we didn't have too many choices in terms of our careers and our lives, and we simply followed the opportunities that came our way. But here is a generation that has plenty of opportunities and alternatives. So they're motivated more by a sense of purpose that makes sense to them. So that's my take on the question. There's a question from Begonia. My feeling is that the Gen Z lives contradictions between ideals of things like environmental protection, etc. And on the contrary, their personal actions, you know, the consumption-oriented behavior, there's a lot of contradiction. So What do you have to say about this contradictory behavior in the younger generations? They're consumption oriented, everything's for them instant gratification. At the same time, they have all these ideals. How does this get reconciled? Very interesting question from Begonia.
But isn't that true of all youngsters? I think I'm still not very sure about this Gen Z stuff. I think most of us, when we were young, we had lots of contradictions. We still have, by the way, but
you're absolutely right.
Them when you were young, yeah.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Snigda agrees.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. I think one of the things that's happened with this generation, especially the Gen Z, is because of last year and the pandemic, where they had to stay at home. The phase of transition that normally happens when one is moving from undergraduate into graduate school and then into the workplace, and that graduate school space is really the transition space. They have lost out on that. And of course, what Professor Rishikesh said about this, all of us have this contradiction and somewhere we try and manage it. I think for this generation, managing this contradiction is going to be more challenging.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any words from Gulnara? And I think we'll ask one or two questions from the audience as well.
Thank you very much. That's everything was a very interesting discussion.
Okay. So questions from the audience. Anyone in the audience would like to ask any question? So, well, in that case, we'll hand over to Cecile from Eduniversal. Cecile, the floor is all yours. It's back to you.
Thank you. If our attendees have some, not only questions, but something to share, some experience or something you create in your different schools to react. We've been talking about the way to adapt the pedagogical tools and ways to engage students. We've been talking about new programs, new curricula. So feel free to share with us something you are doing in your different schools regarding these aspects. I don't know if you have some, or we have some reactions.
We have some more reactions coming in, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read. Socket Chief, we got strategic priorities that the meeting already sharing in order to build future professional and leadership for Gen Z within the globalization challenges. How the business schools should solve this issue.
Yes, that's what our discussion has been about.
Okay, Marie-Jo is asking, how do you adapt your recruitment to this new target generation? And it's true that we are starting observing some new kinds of processes, new tools, new ways, and in some schools, really big changes. For example, here in France, we have a big government institutions in political science, Sciences Po, and they have been really fully changing the processes. And now they are not focused on tests, but on the studies, the past studies, but they are really, the selection is really done with around 4 topics, 4 essays. Students have to work on and to present and be able to have an exchange and a discussion with the faculty. So it's we are seeing new processes. So can you tell more about that from your side?
Yes, processes of recruitment and assessment have to change as well. The old examination system.
Our institute, I don't think processes of admission are changing much, simply because of the numbers involved. So when you have 150 to 200,000 people applying to your MBA program, there's not much you can do, at least at the first stage. The first stage, you will have to adopt some method to reduce it to a more manageable number. You can look at alternate methods like what was just described once you've brought it down to maybe a few hundred students, but certainly can't do that with thousands of students. So that's a big challenge. Ideally, I mean, all of us would like to change recruitment methods. We would much rather have more interactive methods. We like to see how people actually do things. We'd like to observe people in action. We would, of course, love to interact more with them. But the practicalities of the recruitment process seem to come in the way.
Oh, and recruitment is a big challenge because you have the challenge to recruit the adapted people for your school, and at the same time it's the first way you are communicating to the students, your future students, the way you are going to train them. So it's a big challenge, I think, in a pedagogical and in a marketing way, if I can say.
No, you're absolutely right. But in the Indian environment, we have a lot of other challenges. For example, any method has to be seen as objective. For example, we are a public school. Somebody can take us to a court if the method is not seen as objective. So wherever there is a lot of discretion involved, those methods are, though they might be good methods, those methods often don't work. So we have to balance a lot of these other challenges. Otherwise, what you said just now makes a lot of sense.
Oh, for sure. And so the problem is quite different depending the type of the institution, the countries, the culture, for sure. We have other comments here. So from Verena Verdict, thanks a lot. Very interesting. I have to leave, so bye-bye. From Begonia, thank you to all panelists. Do you consider that apart from capturing attention, the challenge is keeping it? In many business schools, they do not allow mobile phones in class. In Silicon Valley, primary schools, teachers cannot take mobiles. They are coming back to roots.
Yes.
And she's sharing a link to an article.
That's true even about corporate training programs, by the way. I know lots of companies which expect you to leave the mobile phone outside the room before you go in.
We have the same rule. The mobile phone should be the outside of the class because it's also disturbing a lot for the class. I agree with this.
Yeah,
definitely. And just this morning, the Facebook has had a hearing from a lady who used to formerly work at Facebook, who has demonstrated how Facebook has repressed some research that was done to show that social media like Instagram actually is not good for mental health of youngsters. And so there is a whole debate. Not good for mental health
of us either, Dr. Madhok.
Yes. So the whole debate is on right now, and we don't know which way it will go, but definitely social media is becoming too powerful and too big a part of our lives. At the same time, yesterday's crash also showed us how difficult it is to work without social media. So there's going to be some way for us to find an equilibrium between how much is right and how much of it is not right. So great. It's been an amazing discussion, Cecile, hasn't it been? Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much to each of you for this nice but interesting and useful moment. It helps us to open our minds to new ways to manage, new ways to work, and new ways to learn and to share our knowledge also. So it's very, very interesting, and we will take all this because the coffee talks, it's also a way for us to adapt, to complete the program of our next convention. And for sure, we will take this in account to complete the program. Next week, we will have a coffee talk with Virginius Kundrotas. So it's focused on Eastern Europe, and it's about how still to growth in challenging times. So big topic and important topic. So at the same hour as today. So please feel free to attend and come. And you have also the possibility to join us and participate in this year convention. So as Aneeta said, for the moment it's online, and we will be using the same platform as last year, so in a 3D world platform, and it will be in November during 3 days. And we are, as you in your school, different schools, trying to improve the way to manage these online events. And we are preparing, with the help of the schools also, very lot of engaging live moments, new experiences to make this convention different and useful and nice and fun, because not only Gen Z needs fun and engagement, and so this is the way we are preparing this very important event, and it will be held online in the 3D World Convention platform for November 17, 18, and 19. So feel free to join us. And if you have some questions, if you have something to share, if you want to be part of it, to take part in the program, just contact Luba, Marie-Jo to have more details about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Aneeta.
much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a nice
Thank
day,
you.
afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you.